ask all these questions. So I'm just gonna like first start off with everyone to like check in. Like, I mean, we've seen this beautiful film. We're gonna definitely get into some more aspects of it. But I'm curious how y'all are doing right now, leading up to this moment. Just like, just like how's your day? How's your week? How's your month? Just generally, how's everything going? Yeah.
So I'll start. It's extremely emotional to see the toll that the last year took on all of us, and to have been made so vulnerable. I'm sure for all of us, our businesses are an extension of who we are. So although we are in business to be out there and make a profit, there's a level of intimacy in the words that were put together that make it very uncomfortable for me, speaking about the loss and speaking about the pandemic.
Yeah, hi, my name is Hank. The pandemic was really hard on a lot of people, and especially small businesses. But I think we're very hopeful that it's almost over and behind us, and we all want to look forward to getting everyone back into the businesses. So there's a lot of hope out there.
Okay, my name is Hind. I'm representing Ambashadani Services, originally from Iraq. I don't talk a lot about myself. I just want to tell you guys how I felt during the pandemic. Most of the things makes me curious during this time. What's these people up to? It's like you think a lot of thinking, like what they're up to, what they want to do, how they're going to survive. And do they think that there's no other choices for them? I was wondering all that time if it's going to be impossible to help them. Are they going to be really ready to receive a hand? What they're thinking? Do they lose hope? Are they still thinking their life's going to go back again together like before? But you'll be amazed the way how they receive every single service or every single help you can give them. And you never realize we're all together alone. We're all together in this pandemic and sacrifice. But you wouldn't know unless if you start talking to them and explain to them there is a lot of things could happen. Something good, I'm sure, at the end of the road. And I believe I can give myself a little bit of credit, helping those people and open their hearts and minds, and things gonna get better soon. And don't make them feel they're paralyzed or they are out of choices. So thank God we're hopefully there, and we're still fighting to provide for our kids and be there for each other, and still have the same level of love and respect, and we never lost hope. And thank you so much for everybody's coming here to listen to us. We met during that pandemic. We met a lot of people every day. You wouldn't believe it. It could be through the video call or any other way, but we found a way to reach out, I would say, to a lot of people. I never thought about we could do that, but the things we realized during the pandemic, things could happen. If you want it to happen, it will happen. And I'm glad I see the city moving back to normal like before, and we're here all together. And again, thank you everyone for coming over here and watch us and listen to us. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I need to thank Cindy and the team and Jade for these wonderful films and the beautiful poems that you wrote. My name is Kit Keys. I'm from Yan Studio. My experience is not that much different from every other business owners. At first, when the pandemic hits, it's very scary. We are our business is based on art, and there are a lot of life that depend on our business, like a lot of artists that work with us. So as an artist, it's a freelance. There's no fixed income or salaries or benefits for them, and they have this family that they have to take care of. When the pandemic hits and we have to shut down by like 3 months, and during that time I have to admit that we all scared. We don't know what's going to happen after. During that time, we don't know that if it's going to be 3 months or if it's going to be longer. But luckily that when the reopening, everyone seems to be like craving for somewhere to have their to entertain them, to play, to go out and in a safe place. So our business is one of the lucky business that survived and moving forward during the pandemic. So yes, I agree with all business owners here that we are very glad that we see hopes there, and very glad that the city is coming back to life now and gonna be back to normal very soon. Thank you.
I kind of lost track of the question. In Kosi, is it different for me and Xiao?
Yeah, I mean, well, for you and Xiao, it's really the same. Of like, how's everything doing? How's everything doing in your life and your work leading up to this point?
Yeah, I think I've just kept busy with a lot of poetry projects and writing, and sort of try to finish up this project with the timeline, but also honoring every single request that I got from business owners as I could do it to also turn in everything. And Xiao did a lot of work also in working overnights, pulled a lot of overnighters just to edit the scene so that everyone lived their best and sort of captured the emotions of the poems.
Yeah, I guess Cindy totally helped me to answer this question, but yeah, I guess for the past month, actually past 4 or 5 months, we've been working on this project, and then having to see it today, presenting on the big screen, having all these people looking at it, I'm really glad, I'm really honored.
So this is a perfect segue to the next question, Cindy, for how did you first envision this project? Like, what was the process leading up to envisioning the concept? And there's a second part after, but yeah, let's start there.
Well, my original concept actually was a lot more different and simple, I think. I was just going to contact some business owners, and I thought it would only be a few. I think I ended up contacting a few hundred, and so many people said no or hung up on me or just sort of didn't respond. So I'm very thankful that the ones who did respond said yes and were excited. And my original conception was just to write the sonnets and then to have the business owners read straight to the camera with no B-roll, with no music, with very little editing, and that obviously was not what happened.
Right. So, I mean, well, I guess sort of piggybacking off of that, for everyone else who's here, I'm curious, if you had a relationship with poetry before this project, if you did, how was it? What was your relationship to it? If not, how was your relationship working with Cindy's work, being a starting point into that?
I guess I'm gonna go first again. So I'm Ramona from Ojalá Threads. I didn't say that the first time. So for my company, I make baby bodysuits inspired by Taino heritage. So the Taino people were the first people that Columbus encountered in the Dominican Republic, where my family's from. And I actually write a poem for every single one of my designs, and I include it in the package. So when Cindy came along and was like, I want to write poems, I was excited, and also I also sensed that from her end, because she saw some of my poetry also. When she sent me the poem, she was like, "Is this okay?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And I think when you have a relationship with poetry, where it's the only place where I tend to let vulnerability out, it is something that I honor in a really special way. And I could sense she was kind of like gauging, like, is Ramona gonna want to edit this? And I was like, not at all. This is perfect. So it was a really enjoyable process to see so much pain and trauma that I had gone through personally and professionally during COVID captured by someone else, because I don't think I'm ready yet to put it in words myself. So I'm grateful that she was able to do that for me.
Thank you for sharing that. I was very nervous about contacting every single business owner with these poems. I just thought, man, I don't know what they're gonna think, or how much I would have to change. And I definitely wish I had 3 to 6 more months to work on the project, but I'm also incredibly grateful that business owners sort of gave me some of that creative liberty. So thank you.
So I own a comic shop and also an art gallery. But strangely enough, I've never encountered a poem except a haiku. So I didn't even know what a sonnet was. So when she contacted us and we spoke a few times, and she presented the sonnet, I thought it was actually pretty profound. So. So I'm kind of embarrassed to say I've never really encountered poetry before, so it's my first time.
Myself, I love poetry a lot. I like to listen to it, I like to read it, but I just, the first time I listened to Cindy, she gave me like a few clips to read. I thought it's about love story. I was like, okay, well, I mean, that's enjoyable. I want to read more. I want to know more about it. And I kept asking her a question. What's next? What are we, why? I thought I want to find out more so I can maybe put more words to it myself. But after all, I feel this is very significant talent you can have. Read people. Read them, and sometimes telling them certain things they wouldn't even know about. And I believe in it big time, and it's been great. I remember Cindy, she kept on neighbor. I was like, okay, but why is neighbor? Why we can put somebody else's name? I didn't realize the bigger picture of it, but it's amazing. You related a lot of things we went through these little beautiful words we put all together. We put it together. I'm listening and I'm reading. I'm like, wow. Thank you so much, Cindy, and thank you for having us here, being a part of this feeling and things we can talk about and feel it and rethink maybe a lot of things in our life.
Well, I'm gonna be the second person on this stage that not really so much into, not have a lot of experience into poem or poetry that much. The last time that probably 30 years ago in college, probably. So, but this time when Cindy sent it over, like after she like wrote about the business and after she talked to us, it was like beautiful. It's like I cannot describe that how I'm like she is so talented that she can capture the words from our talk and she can transform them into a beautiful poems.
Yeah, I guess I'm the third one that that didn't really have a lot of connection with poetry, especially English poetry. Before, I think in my 4 years being in New York, I've read 30 poems, and half of it is from this project. So, but if you're asking from a Chinese background, it is very essential in Chinese poetry history that there are landmarks and there are also great works. And it's also very essential in our education that we know some of the famous ones and we can understand them and recite them even. Yeah, so that's my answer.
So what about the sonnet? What brought you to the sonnet, Cindy? Now that we see some folks who are either familiar or not familiar, the sonnet and the haiku, as Hank had mentioned, are probably one of the most popular forms that we know. So it's like, and it gives a nice access to the work and also to the work of the business owners, but also to your own work. That overlap. So, yeah, talk a bit about the sonnet and how that resonates for you for this project.
Well, first of all, a sonnet is a love poem, and traditionally the love poem would be for a lover or beloved, but I really wanted to use this form to ask a lot of questions. And I don't think I fully got to debrief other people or business owners because it can become maybe just a really long technical conversation, but you get to hear bits of it now. So for sonnets, I wanted to use it as a way to show love, to talk about love, and to think about love, but not necessarily about what you think it might be. So it might be love to your own sadness. It might be love to your own grief, because I think a lot of people have trouble sitting with that, including myself. I want it to be love to your neighborhood, or to a city, or to the little things that we take for granted. So for me, the sonnet was a really good way to express that love. And then another thing that I wanted to do on a technical level was I wanted to take all of these different languages that we hear in New York City. And for me, I missed hearing them just during the pandemic of not being able to walk around. And I wanted to put it sort of front and center in each poem to show, well, first of all, to rhyme English to it, to show the lineage of how we get a lot of our American culture from other cultures. And then the third thing I wanted to do was to show how all of these different cultures sort of, in a sense, like rhyme, how they sort of move together and create this music, and that is part of New York City. And so all of the people who moved out, I think, like, I sort of judged that a little bit. And then the people who stayed, I'm like, I want to interview these people. They're still opening their business doors and they're still engaging with their communities in really vital ways. I think in some sense, all of the business owners I work with are they're like the heart of their communities, or they serve some sort of vital organ. And so I really can't think of a better way than to write a sonnet to all of these different things and to answer these different questions I have about love.
Right. So, like, with love and intimacy and like getting a peek into everyone's like their homes as well as their businesses. Thank y'all for that openness, first of all. But I'm curious now, going to Zhao, about like the visual aspects of capturing these moments inside their spaces, these intimate moments. I'm curious, like, where were you? What was your process in terms of like trying to find the scenes that will fully bring out the stories that were being told on a visual level?
I think for me, I've always known that the priority for this project is the poem itself. So it actually took me some time to think about how to balance that visual and literature at the same time on the screen. So originally I had this idea that is a split screen, but I never was brave enough to look into that approach because as a narrative filmmaker, I never get to work on a project that I, as a director, allow so much space for graphic elements. So I never actually looked into it until I was in a meeting with my art director, Leslie. She actually went to the testing and let me know that it's actually an approach that we should all embrace and we should be brave enough to take on it. So we ended up using the strategy that is the split screen, which is a half spread and a full spread. The team believed that this is a great way to balance both visual and the literature. But in terms of how I approach each business owners and their business and their stories, I think that was a process that I sort of came to a realization when I was reading Cindy's work. It took me a long time to read Cindy's work, to be honest. But as I started reading them, I think they're bold, they're creative, but at the same time, they're also subtle and beautiful. So, as a filmmaker myself, I decided to not to intervene in that process, but just being someone who helped document that process, to honor that relationship that Cindy developed with these business owners. So, as you can see, I used most of this camera work, such as stationary, easy pen and tilt. That's too technical, but just something very quiet, simple, easy. I think this is my approach for this project. But along the process, I did chime in to help each business owner getting comfortable reading in front of the camera, and I think that answers the question, I guess.
No, I appreciate the technical side and everything. So yeah, I'm like, but it's kind of like, Cindy, you have people that you was automatically looking towards to like be part of this. But I'm like, how were you building up the team then? Like, I guess to get the expertise from people like Zhao.
Building a team was very difficult because I didn't really have a community in media. Most of my communities are literary communities, and so I think I got a tip from my neighbor to reach out to the undergrad departments, and so it was actually the music composer from NYU who responded, like I think within a minute of me sending out that email. And then from that point, he sort of connected me with all of these other people who ended up being just incredibly talented people. So I think I got lucky in that way. If that didn't work out, I was actually just gonna drive around to these different places and record on my iPhone, which I'm really glad I didn't have to do.
Right. And you actually went right there. You say like your neighbor was the one who...
My neighbor gave me the tip to email undergrad departments.
Right. So the connection between the neighbor and also your neighbor, I'm curious, it will also branch out really to everyone, but starting off with, to Cindy about during the pandemic and even before, but leading up to it, but, we have obviously have the topic and the talk about distance and how we even connect with one another in different ways. So I'm curious how the neighbor, how are you engaging with the community in your immediate space, and if they are helping in certain ways. And this is branching out to everyone as well. How are your neighbors? How are your neighbors? How are they to you? How's the community?
Well, I do talk to my neighbors, and I try to go to the same businesses every day or every couple of days so that I'm familiar with them. That's how I approach it.
So I am in Mott Haven, which is in the South Bronx, and Ohala is a social enterprise. So a portion of all of our sales actually goes back into the community. And Cindy knows I've had an insane month or decade because I take on campaigns that are focused on social justice and equity along with managing the company. So the one that I'm doing now is actually focused on public housing, and it has been an intense couple weeks because we had to basically organize in 2 weeks to stop the privatization of all public housing in New York City. So I am extremely embedded in my community, and this legislative fight that we just took on and we won on Friday, I actually have a petition if anyone wants to sign it. I've been carrying it in my purse for 2 weeks. But it takes a toll on the community. You know, my neighbors in public housing all across the city, we were more likely to contract COVID and more likely to die from COVID than any other community in New York City. So I lost my grandmother to COVID in December, and countless neighbors and my grandfather, and it just, the toll that last year took on a community that is already the poorest congressional district in the United States can't be quantified. So when I started the company 4 years ago now, I wanted to really be a part of the community, and it's not something that, it's probably why I'm kind of Debbie Downer. I swear I have joy, my dog is joy. But it does take a toll because when the pandemic was reaching its peak, instead of running my company, I was doing a mass drive, and I gathered 4,000 face masks so that every person in my development could have 2 reusable face masks because prices were hiked locally and you couldn't find them. So I knew that that was something that had to be done, and because I've worked in the government in the past, I had the network to make it happen. So my company suffered, I suffered, my family suffered, but I feel like my community and my neighborhood is something that I continuously put ahead of a lot of things. And when folks ask, like, you know, why are you doing that? I tend to think of, you know, my nephew, which is why I started the company. And the way that the dividends of whatever I'm doing, from public housing to public transportation to close Rikers, will pay off in a decade or 2. So that being embedded and that being a part of going to the same shop, I have my local fruit shop, I have a fish market, I have, you know, my bodega. It is such a woven, it's a thread, not to be ironic, and it's, you know, when you go into communities and you don't see that anymore in New York City, it is such a loss. Like, I went to 86th Street today and I didn't recognize it because none of the old stores were there. And I got off the train and I was just like, what happened in the last year and a half or 2 years? And even the person that used to stand on the corner in like the little kiosk with the lotto, like, he's not there anymore. And that's someone who, like, if you walked by often enough, knew who you were. And you were a part of his community for that moment. And small businesses do that wherever we are. And I think as much as the government, you know, attempted to help and support, for the most part, a lot of us were overlooked and didn't receive the support, and then had to take on the additional needs of our community and had to step up in ways that we'd never imagined. And I'm sure we don't regret, but we are essential to our communities. And we had to become first responders to our communities. And we continue to be in our communities when first responders leave.
Talking about the community, the first weeks of pandemic, I remember it was very, very quiet everywhere, and we're just like, we started doing something different than what we used to do. we start walking, me and my husband, every morning. We go for miles and miles, just thinking like, what are we gonna, starting with us, how are we gonna provide for our kids? And for us, how are we gonna put food on the table? We're one of the first people who were worried about that. And it took us just like maybe I would say a few weeks until I see everybody's like start reaching out. They're asking, they're seeking for help or guidance or what's the solution and like how we can do that. And literally after 2-3 weeks, we got super busy, unbelievably like, and you discover new people in your life. And literally your neighbor, you don't know anything about him unless the pandemic happened. People, first of all, they had time to figure out themselves. Secondly, like think about a new way to make a living and get to know each other and understand each other. And I remember that time, like I see like a lot of jokes, you know, people from the Middle East, they send it to me and they know it's funny joke. They said, oh, we discovered my family. I discovered my wife. I know that I have a fourth child I didn't know about before. And it's true. Because during the pandemic, literally, you get together so close to each other. We're all in this together. So you need to listen to me, and I'm gonna listen to you. I'm gonna find a way to help you, and we need to listen to each other. We found a lot of new way to help those people. I discovered many programs that help the public, housing, vouchers, those things, because you know part of our community. All of them, they vulnerable. They need a lot of help, and we just figured it out. We discover a lot of way how to make it happen, and I thank my husband Bradley Scammell, who's always there day and night, 24/7, reaching out. This phone call from this person, he wants this and he wants this, and we get back to them. We give them a way just to to proceed. Find hope, start somewhere, and we get so close to them. Literally, we know a lot of their personal story. We never knew about it before, but they took their time this time to talk about themselves, and they have the time for it. And we have the time to listen very carefully, because just like we feel the pain together. So, and I would say always, if you want to start somewhere, you start with yourself. You can make it happen, and if you ask for help, I'm sure you're gonna find someone who can hear you and listen to you and pass his hand and be there for you. And I'm so happy like what we did for a lot of people, and I hope we can continue doing this. Yeah, like always. All right, that's it.
I think literally speaking, I really don't like my neighborhood, especially that lady who lives downstairs. I'm not gonna talk about it, but from the bigger picture, I think as an international student, I think for us, New York was just maybe high buildings, billboards in Times Square. But after 4 years being in New York and actually working on this project, actually going into this neighborhood and seeing these small communities, seeing these business owners, I actually feel what is New York and why it's so important to have communities there to support each other, to support everyone who's in need. So I guess that answered part of the question is how I treat my neighbors. I guess definitely I have a better sense of what New York is.
Yeah, actually, I mean, like for Zhao, like I'm curious now, post the project, and now that you have even a stronger connection with the communities. What I'm really getting at is I'm curious. What are some of the new things that I guess you had encountered by engaging with these business owners and people from all these different boroughs across like the New York? I know for me, even like sometimes traveling to new places, I'm like, I have never seen this place before, or it's like I've been here all my life. So.
In Cozy, can I interrupt? I think Hank, were you gonna say something?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, for me. When the pandemic hit, it was very hard for us to survive from our immediate, I guess, clients and neighbors. So for us, as soon as they shut us down, we went online, and we started a new type of business, online streaming, and we gained a lot of neighbors from all over the world. So from this new type of business, we call it online auctions, and all our clients became interacting with us from all over the world. And from the day one to now, we have almost the same clients, and it keeps growing. And I guess everybody's stories are very similar, like all over the world. Everybody's having the same plight, same difficulties, and for us, we offered sort of a little stress relief for that couple of hours that we're online. So through the pandemic, we actually gained a brand new audience and brand new neighbors all over the world.
Yeah, I think one of the details that I remember is that people were actually showing up to these auctions, but really to like wish each other happy birthday or even to buy each other's gifts, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this will shift my previous question a little bit. Thank you for mentioning that. Like, there's a lot of political aspects that's inherent in pretty much everything that we do and engage in. So for Zhao, like, also by capturing these people's lives, you're also capturing the politics that they are, even ever so slightly, even just with the one image. Like, curious, like how you yourself had walked into trying to take the images that will really highlight what's unique about everyone, but also I'm wondering, like, those images that you think that you felt that you had to unearth that will show like the political side, the difficult side that people are going through. Are there images that spoke to that you felt they needed to look for?
I'm not sure about political perspective of it, but I believe there are a lot of authentic moments in the film, but one specific area I want to mention to this question is probably the first business owner, Salon. She runs a Ethiopian restaurant. I remember specifically the shot was across the street, and we filmed. I told her to just do your daily routine: how you opened the store, how you walked into this neighborhood, how you walked into the street to your store, and how you opened it. So I remember thinking having that shot, and with the line that Cindy wrote, which is, I used to think I used to cook for 6 hours and wondered if we could have 2 orders of gyros. And that just struck me so hard at that moment. To be honest, I walk past Salon's restaurant every day, almost every day in my last 2 years of college, because I was living in East Village, but I never actually paid a visit. So working on this project and thinking about how I was walking by so many small businesses and took it for granted that they're there for their business or their beings, made me realize how, what's the word? Privileged, and what a bad guy I was, because I never pay attention to these little things in the city that I'm so used to living in. I guess now I have a perspective to think about the food or services that were delivered to me that I took for granted so much and just paid for $10 or $20 for are actually devoted effort and time. I think that is I guess that answers your question. I think that is the one moment that struck me very hard, make me realize how difficult. Yeah.
And going back to, thank you. Going back to Cindy, with the project also now completed, and that like you've kind of like moved through sonnets. Is there anything? Well, I wanted to like highlight that like you have like a lot of moments where you talk about invisible dice. You know, there's a thin line between what is plain and what is invisible. Really, sort of like moving forward. What are you trying to, or you know, that might be such a big question, but it's like moving forward. What are you trying to make more visible to the audience and to whoever consumes the work?
That's such a difficult question. I mean, first, I will say that what I meant by the invisible dice when I first had that in my mind was at the beginning of the pandemic, I think we were in so much fear of going outside to start with, and I wanted to use a phrase that would sort of capture what it was like to kind of walk out and then have something in the air shifting, like constantly shifting, but you didn't know what it was, and it could sort of determine how maybe your tomorrow would be. And so that's where that image comes from. But the invisibility, I mean, I think a lot of people in my life and on this stage can sort of relate to that experience of just not being seen or understood in so many ways, whether that's as a business owner, whether that's as an artist, whether that's as a person of color. And the last year, over a year and a half, there has been so much in terms of like, so much finally, like the tip of the iceberg gets finally being understood about like Black Lives Matter, how Asians are treated, how sort of compliant we are, and how maybe bubbly or very agreeable that we seem on the outside, and so much that's not allowed to be let outside of that. Like I know for myself in my own life, I think people are really taken aback and get really angry when I express just a little bit of anger because they expect an East Asian person to never be angry. And so after the Atlanta shooting, a lot of people were even surprised that I was even angry, and I thought, well, can I have any other reactions? And the answer, surprisingly, was actually no, I cannot have any other reactions. And so I wanted to highlight that there's so much that's invisible. And also in terms of uncertainty, I think the last year we faced so much uncertainty. So that was another theme that I wanted to address.
And for the sort of like closing question, I'm not sure what the timeline is looking like, but for the closing question, I'm like, based on that, for everyone, how, excuse me, I have my notes right here. For the next phase, I guess, after this project, how are people going to also be carrying poetry with them? Like from this project, like there's so many rich. I gotta just make a comment, Cindy. Like so many rich images in there that I almost feel like you have to even want to revisit. And then there's also many rich colors and images. And so with all this stimulation, right, just happening between the visuals and the audible, it's such a beautiful collaboration also with the music. So for the people, the participants, the business owners who had like worked in it and like responded and said these works, how are you taking the art? It seems like many of y'all already work with artists, but how are y'all taking art and poetry, if you wish, forward into your life?
Well, I would say that to me, I would take it like Cindy bring it so beautifully. I have to admit that, and it does remind me of all the beautiful poems, and also collaborate with the visual image, which to me is enlightened. I never seen poem. It's like when you read poems, normally you will have to visualize yourself, but this time we have someone who can help visualize for you. So now it's more touchable. That's for me. Yeah. And I and would probably appreciate more something like this, to see something like this, and I would appreciate to see something like this project from Cindy and Xian in the future as well. Thank you.
I guess for me, to be very frank, Lee, I think read more English literature, and yeah, I always think poetry is a very elegant form of art, and I appreciate it. Now I do more.
I always loved poets and poetry, but I never realized it could be that beautiful. And I just felt we all needed it at this time when we read it. I just felt that life is really coming back like before. And really, like hearing it from different people and how they complete each other's sentence and answer each other's, like in each paragraph or every other sentence, it was really beautiful. I'll work on poetry more.
I don't know when I'm going to be ready to create. For me, I tend to create a design for the baby piece and then write a poem, but it tends to be a really emotional experience and one through which I aim to honor my ancestors. And it is very spiritual and something that like Cindy said, I have not sat with my grief yet, so I don't know when I will be ready to act and create poetry. But you know, when I do, I hope to keep creating this kind of poetry that speaks to those of us that aren't normally depicted. I always used to love poetry as a child, but I remember in school, the stuff that they would teach us here was horrible. And it's probably why more people don't like poetry. And it wasn't until I started this company and I started throwing away the rules that I realized that I was a poet. And in owning that and in creating this kind of poetry that is diverse, that is a reflection of who I am and who I come from, I think all of us have space to live side by side with poetry. But I don't think that, like many places in American culture, education, and Americanism in general, a lot of space isn't left for us. So I think we have to take up that space and create that space by making poetry like this. So I look forward to the day where I'm ready to do that again.
I didn't realize before this project how powerful poetry was. With so little words, almost minimalistic. You say so much, and there's so much power behind it. So I'm really appreciating it with a brand new, brand new look. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm definitely gonna have to start carrying poetry in my store now. I'm very impressed with it.
Yes. Thank y'all, everyone. And Cindy, is there anything about this project, like as sort of like leaving us with it and leaving us with all these stories that everyone's shared today? Is there anything that wasn't said that you feel like people really should know? That you felt was left unsaid?
No, not really. I mean, I think if anyone is curious, they should go talk to business owners. They should learn about different cultures and languages without maybe bothering other people, because there's so many ways you can learn these days. And the final thing I'll say is that I hope that people find little things to love.
Thank you. So I guess that will conclude the evening. Thank you for inviting us and having us in this space. Thank you everyone here for listening to us and listening to these beautiful answers. And I hope everyone has a wonderful night.